Hi guys, welcome back to the Law of One Raw Material. We are on book 4, part 4. And the beginning of each session, they always talk about the attacks that Carla is under. And Ra's really trying to explain the reason why Carla is being attacked and what purpose for the attacks and what the entities that are service to self could possibly gain from attacking Carla. And they want to extinguish her light, her loving light. You can ask why they want to do that. Because entities that want power want nothing but more and more power. You might as well, as ask the devil why they want more souls in hell, because they want more souls to rule over. They would feel more powerful the more that they have. And that's kind of what the emphasis about the attacks on Carla are. And the reason why and how they find her, because she's contacting Ra and she's so dedicated to the workings. I had an experience when I had my awakening and I started teaching the Law of One. It was described as, say, if you're in a dark forest and you shine a flashlight on your face, you're kind of alerting the universe that you have been activated and that you are a source of love and light. And the thing is, if you're in a dark forest like that, think about all the creatures coming out of the woods to come and check you out. And if they want their woods to stay dark, they want to try to extinguish that light. Think of it that way. So, I had experiences when I first had my awakening. I would have these entities coming into my house and my room. And really, they were just scaring the crap out of me. And one of them took on and changed its shape to be something that it knew kind of that I was scared of. And it changed its shape into this really scary clown with a red suit and red hair. And I was trying not to freak out, and because I knew what it was doing. It was trying to scare me. And then that really wasn't working, actually, because I was still trying to feel love at the time, because I know that that's basically the only thing that works to repel entities that are coming in to attack you. And then it changed its shape. It changed itself into a man that was scary, like a mental patient that didn't know what he was doing and could attack me. And it was standing over top of me, just staring at me. And again, I was trying not to freak out, but because this stuff is really scary when it happens to you after you've had an awakening. Then it dissipated and I just kind of lied there, and I tried to surround myself with like a white light of love to kind of protect myself. And then I did have to do clearings and sage and do a lot of other things for protection, because at that point I didn't know what was happening to me still. I was at the very beginning of my awakening. I didn't know how to put protection on myself. So these are things that I had to learn. So I really, I really sympathize with Carla being under these attacks and trying to find out why they're attacking you and what could they possibly gain. You're not hurting anyone. You're not trying to take anything from anyone. So what would they gain from attacking you? So think about when you're dealing with service to self, anything that they can extinguish or take from you would give them more power. So sorry for that long explanation, but these get said over and over again in the beginning of each session now, because we're really far into these workings that Carla is doing for us. And she was really sacrificing herself a lot and putting herself at risk for doing these workings. So let's move on. In this session, they do talk about the devil, And as far as definitions, another definition that we should really look into is the adept. When Ra uses it, the adept is a person that has a lot of experience. So think about someone who is in late third density, has got thousands of incarnations of experience. They can now be referred to as an adept. And when they talk about the devil in the tarot, the devil actually has two beings on it. They're naked and they're chained to the devil, and both of them are considered adept. They both have enough experience now to choose to be service to others and service to self. And it gives you an idea that the devil wants all of it. It's also a choice being made. You can see, whenever you see two things in a tarot, you know that there's a choice being made. There's options, there's a way out. But the devil is still the devil. In the tarot of modern times and the tarot what Ra was referring to. Also, a symbol that they talk about and they don't really defy is the moon symbol. When they talk about things in the moon in tarot and in this next session, when you hear the moon, you can refer to it as something that's hidden and needs to be searched for and explored. So in the daytime, you can see everything, there's not a lot of guesswork, you have a full spectrum of everything that's out there. But when they say moon, it's nighttime and you can't see everything and things are hidden from you and you need to explore. And just like the sun, when there is a sun card, and that's card number 19, that's when things are fully radiated, when you are fully submersed in service to others. You have all this joy and love on you, and you have all this joy and love to give out. And that's that card there. And they talk about a couple of the other cards. The Wheel of Fortune is an interesting card. That's the card number 10, actually. So they bounce around a little bit. They didn't mean to do that, but card number 10 is the Wheel of Fortune, and that's the catalyst of the body. And when you actually look at the card, it's a wheel, and it's got all these things on the inside of it, the outside of it, and there's a lot of stuff going on. And way to look at the wheel as you're going through life, the ups and downs. When the wheel is turning, like if you're on a Ferris wheel, let's turn the Wheel of Fortune into a Ferris wheel. When you're at the top, it's like, hurrah, this is great. And then the wheel starts turning and all of a sudden you're at the bottom. It's like, well, this isn't good. I can't see anything from here. This isn't as much fun. But then you go up again. So think about the ups and downs and the spinning of the wheel as all these experiences from outside stimulus coming at you. That's the way it kind of reads both in modern tarot and in the tarot that Ra is talking about. And finally, at the end of session 81, they want to talk about what Ra's experience are outside of this galaxy, and there isn't a lot besides the wanderers. So I did find out I'm a wanderer from the Ra collective, and I too have reincarnated I had a lifetime on Maldek, and I'm here doing both, teaching the law of one there and here. But I don't have any memory of other lifetimes that I've had as a wanderer. And other collective wanderers of Ra have gone outside this galaxy to serve, from whatever calling that they have. And it is usually 3D that calls for service from Ra. And it's mostly wanderers that go to meet that call as a volunteer. And the reason why Ra doesn't show up kind of in other galaxies in the material is because in late 6th density, civilizations tend to peter out in time-space because you no longer need it. When you have a society that is so utopian and everything is completely solved, then you work on healing others and healing other planets and healing other solar systems and going where you're needed. And because your consciousness is so tied into source, you really don't need technology. Like you can travel through thought and you can manifest a body through thought, and so you don't need spaceships or things like that. In late 6th density, it tends to all get abandoned and consciousness just gets used. Now that's only for service to others. If you're service to self, because you don't have that tie and connection to source energy, and you choose to be separate, you end up having to use technology. You have to use AI, and AI is a major component when you're dealing with service to self. They have all these mechanisms to create things through AI, but when you're service to others, you really don't need that. And it's like that with almost all societies, it's like that with all entities on other planets and other systems. Once you reach late 6th density and are about to go into 7th, tangible, like things like spaceship, they end up getting fairly abandoned. Or if they're needed, they can be created through thought. So they don't need to actually build things and have buildings built the way we think of them now. Everything can be created through thought if it's needed. But this is a fun session. It's not as intense as the previous one, and I hope you guys enjoy it. So let's get into it. Here is Book 4, Part 4 of The Law of One, Raw Material.
The Law of One, Book 4, Session 80, February 27th, 1982. Ra, I am Ra. We greet you in the love and in the light of the One Infinite Creator. Before we initiate this working, we would wish to correct an error which we have found in previous material. That archetype 5 which you have called the Hierophant is the significator of the mind complex. This instrument is prey to sudden flares towards the distortion known as pain. We are aware of your conscientious attempts to aid the instrument but know of no other modality available to the support group, other than the provision of water therapy upon the erect spinal portion of the physical body complex, which we have previously mentioned. This instrument's distortions of body do not ever rule out, shall we say, such flares during these periods of increased distortion of the body complex. Our contact may become momentarily garbled. Therefore, we request that any information which seems garbled be questioned, as we wish this contact to remain as undistorted as the limitations of language, mentality, and sensibility allow. We communicate now. Questioner, thank you. Could you please give me the condition of the instrument? Ra, I am Ra. This instrument is experiencing mild fluctuations of the physical energy complex which are causing sudden changes, from physical energy deficit to some slight physical energy. This is due to many, what you may call, prayers and affirmations offered to and by the instrument, offset by continual greetings whenever it is feasible, by the fifth density entity of whom you are aware. In other respects, the instrument is in the previously stated condition. Questioner, I had to leave the room for a forgotten item after we performed the banishing ritual. Did this have a deleterious effect on the ritual or the working? Ra, I am Ra. Were it the only working, the lapse would have been critical. There is enough residual energy of a protective nature in this place of working that this lapse, though quite unrecommended, does not represent a threat to the protection which the ritual of which you spoke offers. Questioner, has our fifth density visitor been less able to affect the instrument during our more recent workings? Ra, I am Ra. We shall answer in two parts. Firstly, during the workings themselves the entity has been baited to a great extent. Secondly, in the general experiential circumstances of your spacetime experience, this fifth density entity is able to greet this entity with the same effectiveness upon the physical body complex as always since the inception of its contact with your group. This is due to the several physical complex distortions of the instrument. However, the instrument has become more mentally and spiritually able to greet this entity with love, thereby reducing the element of fear, which is an element the entity counts as a great weapon in the attempt to cause cessation, in any degree, of the raw contact. Questioner, what is the reason for the fact that the entity is able to act through physical distortions that are already present, as opposed to being unable to act upon an entity who has no physical distortion at all? Ra, I am Ra. The key to this query is the term distortion. Any distortion, be it physical, mental, or spiritual in complex nature, may be accentuated by the suggestion of one able to work magically, that is, to cause changes in consciousness. This entity has many physical distortions. Each in the group has various mental distortions. Their nature varies. The less balanced the distortion by self-knowledge, the more adeptly the entity may accentuate such a distortion in order to mitigate against the smooth functioning and harmony of the group. Questioner, as Ra well knows, the information that we accumulate here will be illuminating to a very minor percentage of those who populate this planet simply because there are very few people who can understand it. However, it seems that our fifth density visitor is, shall we say, dead set against this communication. Can you tell me why this is so important to him, since it is of such a limited effect, I would guess, upon the harvest of this planet? Ra, I am Ra. Purity does not end with the harvest of third density. The fidelity of Ra towards the attempt to remove distortions is total. This constitutes an acceptance of responsibility for service to others, which is of relative purity. The instrument through which we speak and its support group have a similar fidelity and, disregarding any inconvenience to self, desire to serve others. Due to the nature of the group, the queries made to us by the group have led rapidly into somewhat abstruse regions of commentary. This content does not mitigate against the underlying purity of the contact. Such purity is as a light. Such an intensity of light attracts attention. Questioner: what would our fifth density visitor hope to gain for himself if he were to be successful in eliminating this contact? Ra: I am Ra. As we have previously stated, the entity hopes to gain a portion of that light, that is, the mind-body-spirit complex of the instrument. Barring this, the entity intends to put out the light. Questioner: I understand this up to a point, and that point is if the entity were successful in either of these attempts, of what value would this be to him? Would it increase his ability? Would it increase his polarity? By what mechanism would it do whatever it does? Ra: I am Ra. Having attempted, for some of your spacetime with no long-lasting result, to do these things, the entity may be asking this question of itself. The gain for triumph is an increase in negative polarity to the entity in that it has removed a source of radiance and, thereby, offered to this space-time the opportunity of darkness where there once was light. In the event that it succeeded in enslaving the mind-body-spirit complex of the instrument, it would have enslaved a fairly powerful entity, thus adding to its power. Questioner: I am sorry for my lack of penetration of these mechanisms, and I apologize for some rather stupid questions, but I think we have here a point that is somewhat central to what we are presently attempting to understand. Some of my next questions may be almost unacceptably stupid, but I will attempt to try to understand what this power that our visitor seeks is and how he uses it. It seems to me that this is central to the mind and its evolution. As our visitor increases his power through these works, what is the power that he increases? Can you describe it? Ra: I am Ra. The power of which you speak is a spiritual power. The powers of the mind, as such, do not encompass such works as these. You may, with some fruitfulness, consider the possibilities of moonlight. You are aware that we have described the matrix of the spirit as a night. The moonlight, then, offers either a true picture scene in shadow or chimera and falsity. The power of falsity is deep, as is the power to discern truth from shadow. The shadow of hidden things is an infinite depth in which is stored the power of the one infinite creator. The adept, then, is working with the power of hidden things illuminated by that which can be false or true. To embrace falsity, to know it, and to seek it, and to use it gives a power that is most great. This is the nature of the power of your visitor, and may shed some light upon the power of one who seeks in order to serve others as well, for the missteps in the night are so easy. Questioner: are you saying, then, that this power is of the spirit and not of the mind or of the body? Ra: I am Ra. The work of the adept is based upon previous work with the mind and the body, else work with the spirit would not be possible on a dependable basis. With this comment, we may assert the correctness of your assumption. Questioner: the 15th archetype is the matrix of the spirit and has been called the devil. Can you tell me why that is so? Ra: I am Ra. We do not wish to be facile in such a central query, but we may note that the nature of the spirit is so infinitely subtle, that the fructifying influence of light upon the great darkness of the spirit is very often not as apparent as the darkness itself. The progress chosen by many adepts becomes a confused path as each adept attempts to use the catalyst of the spirit. Few there are which are successful in grasping the light of the sun. By far, the majority of adepts remain groping in the moonlight and, as we have said, this light can deceive as well as uncover hidden mystery. Therefore, the melody, shall we say, of this matrix often seems to be of a negative and evil, as you would call it, nature. It is also to be noted that an adept is one which has freed itself more and more from the constraints of the thoughts, opinions, and bonds of other selves. Whether this is done for service to others or service to self, it is a necessary part of the awakening of the adept. This freedom is seen by those not free as what you would call evil or black. The magic is recognized, the nature is often not. Questioner: could I say, then, that implicit in the process of becoming adept is the seeming polarization towards service to self because the adept becomes disassociated with many of his kind? Ra: I am Ra. This is likely to occur. The apparent happening is disassociation, whether the truth is service to self and thus true disassociation from other selves or service to others, and thus true association with the heart of all other selves and disassociation only from the illusory husks, which prevent the adept from correctly perceiving the self and other self as one. Questioner: then you say that this effect of disassociation on the service-doers adept is a stumbling block or slowing process in reaching that goal, to which he aspires. Is this correct? Ra: I am Ra. This is incorrect. This disassociation from the miasma of illusion and misrepresentation of each and every distortion is a quite necessary portion of an adept's path. It may be seen by others to be unfortunate. Questioner: then is this, from the point of view of the 15th archetype, somewhat of an excursion into the matrix of the spirit in this process? Does that make any sense? Ra: I am Ra. The excursion of which you speak and the process of disassociation is most usually linked with that archetype you call hope, which we would prefer to call faith. This archetype is the catalyst of the spirit and, because of the illuminations of the potentiator of the spirit, will begin to cause these changes in the adept's viewpoint. Questioner: I didn't intend to get too far ahead of my questioning process here. The positively or negatively polarized adept, then, is building a potential to draw directly on the spirit for power. Is this correct? Ra: I am Ra. It would be more proper to say that the adept is calling directly through the spirit to the universe for its power, for the spirit is a shuttle. Questioner: the only obvious significant difference, I believe, between the positive and negative adepts in using this shuttle is the way they polarize. Is there a relationship between the archetypes of the spirit and whether the polarization is either positive or negative? Is, for instance, the positive calling through the 16th archetype and the negative calling through the 15th archetype? I am very confused about this, and I imagine that that question is either poor or meaningless. Can you answer that? Ra: I am Ra. It is a challenge to answer such a query, for there is some confusion in its construction. However, we shall attempt to speak upon the subject. The adept, whether positive or negative, has the same matrix. The potentiator is also identical. Due to the catalyst of each adept, the adept may begin to pick and choose that into which it shall look further. The experience of the spirit, that which you have called the moon, is then, by far, the more manifest of influences upon the polarity of the adept. Even the most unhappy of experiences, shall we say, which seem to occur in the catalyst of the adept, seen from the viewpoint of the spirit, may, with the discrimination possible in shadow, be worked with until light equaling the light of brightest noon descends upon the adept and positive or service-doer's illumination has occurred. The service to self-adept will satisfy itself with the shadows and, grasping the light of day, will toss back the head in grim laughter, preferring the darkness. Questioner: I guess the 19th archetype of the spirit would be the significator of the spirit. Is that correct? Ra: I am Ra. This is correct. Questioner: how would you describe the significator of the spirit? Ra: I am Ra. In answer to the previous query, we set about doing just this. The significator of the spirit is that living entity which either radiates or absorbs the love and the light of the one infinite creator, radiates it to others or absorbs it for the self. Questioner: then would this process of radiation or absorption, since we have what I would call a flux or flux rate, be the measure of the adept? Ra: I am Ra. This may be seen to be a reasonably adequate statement. Questioner: then for the 20th archetype, I'm guessing that this is the transformation of the spirit, possibly analogous to the 6th density merging of the paths. Is this in any way correct? Ra: I am Ra. No. Questioner: sorry about that. Can you tell me what the 20th archetype would be? Ra: I am Ra. That which you call the sarcophagus in your system may be seen to be the material world, if you will. This material world is transformed by the spirit into that which is infinite and eternal. The infinity of the spirit is an even greater realization than the infinity of consciousness, for consciousness, which has been disciplined by will and faith, is that consciousness which may contact intelligent infinity directly. There are many things which fall away in the many, many steps of adepthood. We, of Ra, still walk these steps and praise the one infinite creator at each transformation. Questioner, then I would guess that the 21st archetype would represent contact with intelligent infinity. Is that correct? Ra, I am Ra. This is correct, although one may also see the reflection of this contact as well as the contact with intelligent energy, which is the universe, or, as you have called it somewhat provincially, the world. Questioner, then by this contact also with intelligent energy, can you give me an example of what this would be for both the contact with intelligent infinity and the contact with intelligent energy? Could you give me an example of what type of experience this would result in, if that is at all possible? Ra, I am Ra. This shall be the last query of this working of full length. We have discussed the possibilities of contact with intelligent energy, for this energy is the energy of the logos, and thus it is the energy which heals, builds, removes, destroys, and transforms all other selves as well as the self. The contact with intelligent infinity is most likely to produce an unspeakable joy in the entity experiencing such contact. If you wish to query in more detail upon this subject, we invite you to do so in another working. Is there a brief query before we close this working? Questioner, is there anything that we can do to improve the contact or to make the instrument more comfortable? Ra, I am Ra. The alignments are most conscientious. We are appreciative. The entity which serves as instrument is somewhat distorted towards that condition you call stiffness of the dorsal regions. Manipulation would be helpful. I am Ra. I leave you, my friends, glorying in the light and the love of the one infinite creator. Go forth, therefore, rejoicing in the power and in the peace of the one infinite creator. Adonai. The Law of One, Book 4, Session 81, March 22, 1982. Ra, I am Ra. I greet you in the love and in the light of the one infinite creator. We communicate now. Questioner, could you first tell me the condition of the instrument? Ra, I am Ra. The physical complex energy is in deficit at this particular space-time nexus due to prolonged psychic accentuation of pre-existing distortions. The remainder of the energy complex levels are as previously stated. Questioner, is this the reason for the instrument's feeling of uninterrupted weariness? Ra, I am Ra. There are portions of your space-time in which this may be said to be symptomatic of the psychic greeting reaction. However, the continual weariness is not due to psychic greeting but is rather an inevitable consequence of this contact. Questioner, why is this an inevitable consequence? What is the mechanism of this contact that creates this weariness? Ra, I am Ra. The mechanism creating weariness is that connection betwixt the density wherein this instrument's mind-body-spirit complex is safely kept during these workings and the altogether variant density in which the instrument's physical body complex resides at this space-time. As the instrument takes on more of the coloration of the resting density, the third density experience seems more heavy and wearisome. This was accepted by the instrument, as it desired to be of service. Therefore, we accept also this effect about which nothing of which we are aware may be done. Questioner, is the effect a function of the number of sessions, and has it reached a peak level or will it continue to increase in effect? Ra, I am Ra. This wearying effect will continue but should not be confused with the physical energy levels, having only to do with the, as you would call it, daily round of experience. In this sphere, those things which are known already to aid this instrument will continue to be of aid. You will, however, notice the gradual increase in transparency, shall we say, of the vibrations of the instrument. Questioner, I didn't understand what you meant by that last statement. Could you explain it? Ra, I am Ra. Weariness of the time-space nature may be seen to be that reaction of transparent or pure vibrations with impure, confused, or opaque environs. Questioner, is there any of this effect upon the other two of us in this group? Ra, I am Ra. This is quite correct. Questioner, then we would also experience the uninterrupted weariness as a consequence of the contact. Is this correct? Ra, I am Ra. The instrument, by the very nature of the contact, bears the brunt of this effect. Each of the support group, by offering the love and the light of the one infinite creator in unqualified support in these workings and in energy transfers, For the purpose of these workings, experiences between 10 and 15%, roughly, of this effect. It is cumulative and identical in the continual nature of its manifestation. Questioner, what could be the result of this continued wearying effect after a long period? Ra, I am Ra. You ask a general query with infinite answers. We shall overgeneralize in order to attempt to reply. One group might be tempted and thus lose the very contact which caused the difficulty. So the story would end. Another group might be strong at first but not faithful in the face of difficulty. Thus the story would end. Another group might choose the path of martyrdom in its completeness and use the instrument until its physical body complex failed from the harsh toll demanded when all energy was gone. This particular group, at this particular nexus, is attempting to conserve the vital energy of the instrument. It is attempting to balance love of service and wisdom of service, and it is faithful to the service in the face of difficulty. Temptation has not yet ended this group's story. We may not know the future, but the probability of this situation continuing over a relatively substantial period of your spacetime is large. The significant factor is the will of the instrument and of the group to serve. That is the only cause for balancing the slowly increasing weariness, which will continue to distort your perceptions. Without this the contact might be possible but finally seem too much of an effort. Questioner, the instrument would like to know why she has a feeling of increased vital energy? Ra, I am Ra. We leave this answer to the instrument. Questioner, she would like to know if she has an increased sensitivity to foods? Ra, I am Ra. This instrument has an increased sensitivity to all stimuli. It is well that it use prudence. Questioner, going back to the previous session, picking up on the 10th archetype, which is the catalyst of the body, the wheel of fortune represents interaction with other selves. Is this a correct statement? Ra, I am Ra. This may be seen to be a roughly correct statement in that each catalyst is dealing with the nature of those experiences, entering the energy web and vibratory perceptions of the mind-body-spirit complex. The most carefully noted addition would be that the outside stimulus of the Wheel of Fortune is that which offers both positive and negative experience. Questioner, the 11th archetype would then be the experience of the body, which represents the catalyst, which has been processed by the mind-body-spirit complex and is called the enchantress because it produces further seed for growth. Is this correct? Ra, I am Ra. This is correct. Questioner, we have already discussed the significator, so I will skip number 13. The transformation of the body is called death, for with death the body is transformed to a higher vibrational body for additional learning. Is this correct? Ra, I am Ra. This is correct and may be seen to be additionally correct in that each moment and certainly each diurnal period of the bodily incarnation offers death and rebirth to one which is attempting to use the catalyst which is offered it. Questioner, finally, the 14th. The way of the body is called the alchemist because there is an infinity of time for the various bodies to operate within to learn the lessons necessary for evolution. Is this correct? Ra, I am Ra. This is less than completely correct as the great way of the body must be seen, as are all the archetypes of the body, to be a mirror image of the thrust of the activity of the mind. The body is the creature of the mind and is the instrument of manifestation for the fruits of mind and spirit. Therefore, you may see the body as providing the Athanor 3 through which the alchemist manifests gold. Questioner, I have guessed that the way to enter into a better comprehension of the archetypes is to compare what we experience now, after the veil, with what was experienced prior to that time, starting possibly as far back as the beginning of this octave of experience, to see how we got into the condition that we are in now. If this is agreeable, I would like to retreat to the very beginning of this octave of experience, to investigate the conditions of mind, body, and spirit as they evolved in this octave. Is this acceptable? Ra, I am Ra. The direction of questions is your provenance. Questioner, Ra states that it has knowledge of only this octave, but it seems that Ra has complete knowledge of this octave. Can you tell me why this is? Ra, I am Ra. Firstly, we do not have complete knowledge of this octave. There are portions of the 7th density which, although described to us by our teachers, remain mysterious. Secondly, we have experienced a great deal of the available refining catalyst of this octave, and our teachers have worked with us most carefully that we may be one with all, that in turn our eventual returning to the great allness of creation shall be complete. Questioner. Then Ra has knowledge from the first beginnings of this octave through its present experience and what I might call direct, or experiential knowledge through communication with those spacetimes and time-spaces, but has not yet evolved to or penetrated the 7th level. Is this a roughly correct statement? Ra, I am Ra. Yes. Questioner, why does Ra not have any knowledge of that which was prior to the beginning of this octave? Ra, I am Ra. Let us compare octaves to islands. It may be that the inhabitants of an island are not alone upon a planetary sphere, but if an ocean-going vehicle in which one may survive has not been invented, true knowledge of other islands is possible only if an entity comes among the islanders and says, I am from elsewhere. This is a rough analogy. However, we have evidence of this sort, both of previous creation and 3. Athanor, an oven, a fire, a digesting furnace, formerly used in alchemy, so constructed as to maintain a uniform and constant heat. Creation to be, as we in the stream of space-time and time-space view these apparently non-simultaneous events. Questioner. We presently find ourselves in the Milky Way galaxy of some 200 or so billion stars, and there are millions, and millions of these large galaxies spread out through what we call space. To Ra's knowledge, can I assume that the number of these galaxies is infinite? Is this correct? Ra, I am Ra. This is precisely correct and is a significant point. Questioner, the point being that we have unity. Is that correct? Ra, I am Ra. You are perceptive. Questioner, then what portion of these galaxies is Ra aware of? Has Ra experienced consciousness in many other of these galaxies? Ra, I am Ra. No. Questioner, has Ra experienced or does Ra have any knowledge of any of these other galaxies? Has Ra traveled to, in one form or another, any of these other galaxies? Ra, I am Ra. Yes. Questioner, it's unimportant, but how many other of these galaxies has Ra traveled to? Ra, I am Ra. We have opened our hearts in radiation of love to the entire creation. Approximately 90% of the creation is at some level aware of the sending and able to reply. All of the infinite logoi are one in the consciousness of love. This is the type of contact which we enjoy rather than travel. Questioner, so that I can just get a little idea of what I am talking about. What are the limits of Ra's travel in the sense of directly experiencing or seeing the activities of various places? Is it solely within this galaxy, and if so, how much of this galaxy? Or does it include some other galaxies? Ra, I am Ra. Although it would be possible for us to move at will throughout the creation within this logos, that is to say, the Milky Way galaxy, so-called, we have moved where we were called to service, these locations being, shall we say, local and including Alpha Centauri. Planets of your solar system which you call the Sun, Cepheus, and Zeta Reticuli. To these sublogoi we have come, having been called. Questioner, was the call in each instance from the 3rd density beings, or was this call from other densities? Ra, I am Ra. In general, the latter supposition is correct. In the particular case of the Sun sublogos, 3rd density is the density of calling. Questioner, Ra then has not moved at any time into one of the other major galaxies. Is this correct? Ra, I am Ra. This is correct. Questioner, does Ra have knowledge of any other major galaxy or the consciousness of anything in that galaxy? Ra, I am Ra. We assume you are speaking of the possibility of knowledge of other major galaxies. There are wanderers from other major galaxies drawn to the specific needs of a single call. There are those among our social memory complex which have become wanderers in other major galaxies. Thus there has been knowledge of other major galaxies. For to one whose personality or mind-body-spirit complex has been crystallized, the universe is one place and there is no bar upon travel. However, our interpretation of your query was a query concerning the social memory complex traveling to another major galaxy. We have not done this, nor do we contemplate it, for we can reach in love with our hearts. Questioner, thank you. In this line of questioning, I am trying to establish a basis for understanding the foundation for not only the experience that we have now, but how the experience was formed, and how it is related to all the rest of the experience through the portion of the octave as we understand it. I am assuming, then, that all of these galaxies, this infinite number of galaxies that we can just begin to become aware of with our telescopes, are all of the same octave. Is this correct? Ra, I am Ra. This is correct. Questioner, I was wondering if some of the wanderers from Ra in going to some of the other major galaxies, that is, leaving this system of some 200 billion stars of lenticular shape and going to another cluster of billions of stars, and finding their way into some planetary situation there, would encounter the dual polarity that we have here, the service to self and the service to others polarities? Ra, I am Ra. This is correct. Questioner, you stated earlier that toward the center of this galaxy is what, to use a poor term, you could call the older portion where you would find no service to self polarization. Am I correct in assuming that this is true with the other galaxies with which wanderers from Ra have experience? At the center of these galaxies, only the service to others polarity exists, and the experiment started farther out toward the rim of the galaxy? Ra, I am Ra. Various logoi and sublogoi had various methods of arriving at the discovery of the efficiency of free will and intensifying the experience of the Creator, by the Creator. However, in each case this has been a pattern. Questioner, you mean then that the pattern is that the service to self-polarization appeared farther out from the center of the galactic spiral? Ra, I am Ra. This is correct. Questioner, from this I will assume that from the beginning of the octave we had the core of many galactic spirals forming, and I know that this is incorrect in the sense of timelessness. But as the spiral formed, then I am assuming that in this particular octave the experiment of the veiling and the extending of free will must have started, roughly, simultaneously in many of the budding or building galactic systems. Am I in any way correct with this assumption? Ra, I am Ra. You are precisely correct. This instrument is unusually fragile at this spacetime and has used much of the transferred energy. We would invite one more full query for this working. Questioner, actually, I don't have much more on this except to make the assumption that there must have been some type of communication throughout the octave so that, when the first experiment became effective, knowledge of this spread rapidly through the octave and was picked up by other budding galactic spirals, you might say. Is this correct? Ra, I am Ra. This is correct. To be aware of the nature of this communication is to be aware of the nature of the logos. Much of what you call creation has never separated from the one logos of this octave and resides within the one infinite creator. Communication in such an environment is the communication of cells of the body. That which is learned by one is known to all. The sublogoi, then, have been in the position of refining the discoveries of what might be called the earlier sublogoi. May we ask if we may answer any brief queries at this working? Questioner, only if there is anything that we can do to make the instrument more comfortable or to improve the contact. Ra, I am Ra. It is difficult to determine the energy levels of the instrument and support group. Of this we are aware. It is, however, recommended that every attempt be made to enter each working with the most desirable configurations of energy possible. All is well, my friends. You are conscientious and the alignments are well. I am Ra. I leave you in the love and the light of the one infinite Creator. Go forth, therefore, rejoicing in the power and in the peace of the infinite Creator. Adonai.